Hello, and welcome to Humorous Horror, where I tell stories that are both frightening and funny. My next story is called The Purple Gorilla. It is of unknown origin. There was a man who had an old pickup truck that didn't run very well. It was constantly needing repair, but he couldn't afford anything better. One evening, he was driving home from a camping trip out in the mountains, and it started sputtering, which was a good sign it would soon stop running. Luckily, there was a farm up ahead, so he pulled in and stopped. He knocked on the door. The man couldn't get a signal on his cell phone, so he asked the farmer there if he could use his phone to call for help. Unfortunately, he didn't have a phone, so he asked him if he could spend the night in his barn and maybe use some of his tools to fix his truck in the morning. Now you know how farmers are, always willing to help folks out and all, so he said that would be just fine. He even invited him in to have dinner before turning in for the night. They had a nice dinner of beef, potatoes, and beans, and then he showed him to the barn so he could lay out his sleeping bag on the straw. It was a real nice barn, and he was sure he'd get a good night's sleep. But just as the farmer was leaving, he said there was one thing he figured the man should know about. So the farmer took the man to a pile of straw and pushed it out of the way, revealing a trap door in the floor. He grabbed the iron ring on the door and he pulled it up. There the man saw stairs heading down into the dark, and he followed the farmer down the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs there was a large oak door with an iron bolt. The farmer pushed the bolt across and pulled the door open and walked through. Down a narrow dark tunnel they encountered a steel door with a solid crossbar holding it closed. The farmer lifted the crossbar and struggled to pull the door open, and they walked on. A few yards further on, there was a clear door made of bullet-proof glass, 12 inches thick. It had a combination lock, and the man watched as the farmer opened it. 12, 23, 7. Click, click, click. Then they swung the door open. Past this door was a huge cage made of 3-inch round titanium bars. But that wasn't what caught the man's eye. What he saw was a huge monster inside the cage. It was gigantic. It was covered with purple fur. And it was asleep. The farmer said, "This is what I needed to show you. This is my purple gorilla. And you've got to promise me, I mean really promise me, that you will not touch him." Well, the man thought that was about the most ridiculous thing he'd ever heard. Of course, he wasn't going to touch a gigantic purple gorilla. So he promised the farmer he would not, and he thanked him for showing him his secret. Then they made their way back to the circus. The farmer closed the glass door and spun the lock. Click, click, click. He closed the steel door and lowered the crossbar. He closed the oak door and slid the bolt in place. They climbed the stairs and then dropped the trapdoor closed. Then the farmer spread straw back over the trapdoor to hide it. Well, the man was tired, so he laid out his sleeping bag and hit the hay. The farmer went back to his house. But the man just couldn't stop thinking about that purple gorilla. What a magnificent creature. He wondered why the farmer didn't want him to touch it. What harm would there be? Finally, his curiosity got the best of him, and he couldn't fight it any longer. He jumped up and went over and brushed the straw from the trap door. He grabbed the iron ring on the door and pulled it up. He went down the stairs. He pushed the bolt on the oak door open and pulled the door open. and walked through. He raised the crossbar on the steel door and struggled to pull the door open and walked on. He came to the 12-inch thick, bulletproof glass door and opened the combination lock. 12, 23, 7. Click, click, click. And he swung the door open. He walked up to the huge cage made of 3-inch round titanium bars and gazed at the purple gorilla that was still, fast asleep. He reached out his hand and softly touched his fur. The gorilla immediately jumped up and let out a blood-curdling roar, turning and staring at the man with huge, blood-red eyes. Needless to say, he tore out of there as fast as he could. When he got to the glass door, he could hear the gorilla tearing at the bars of the cage. He turned around in time to see him ripping and bending the bars and forcing his way through. He closed the glass door and spun the lock and ran on. Just as he was closing the steel door, he heard the gorilla hit the glass door and it shattered into 1,000,000 shards of glass. He lowered the crossbar. He slammed the oak door closed. Just as the steel door exploded off its hinges, he slid the bolt in place and scurried up the stairs. Just as he was dropping the trap door, the oak door disintegrated into slivers no bigger than a toothpick. He didn't bother spreading the straw over the trap door. Instead, he ran to his truck, hoping to escape. As he opened the truck's door, straw and wood flew out of the door of the barn as the trapdoor was thrown from its hinges, and the gorilla leapt out into the barnyard. The gorilla saw the man as he jumped into his truck and tried to get it started. The man turned the key and could see the gorilla running across the barnyard toward him. The truck didn't start. He tried again, and this time the engine turned on and came to life. Just as he was putting the truck in gear, the purple gorilla reached the door, grabbed the handle, and ripped the door completely off the truck. The man stomped on the gas. The engine raced. But nothing happened. The gorilla had lifted the truck off the ground, and the man was hopeless. As the man sat there helplessly, that enormous purple gorilla reached into the cab, stretched out his giant, hairy hand towards the man, and said, "Tag! You're it!" And that's the end of The Purple Gorilla. I'll see you next time on Humorous Horror.